What's up, everyone? Welcome to The Spooky Brain, a mental health podcast by and for the absolute gremlin. My name's Kit Kerrigan, and I am not a therapist. What I am is a neurodivergent person with a complex psych history and a special interest in the brain. I have been in therapy for over 16 years. I survived over 20 years of chronic suicidal ideation. And if you've found yourself thinking that this therapy thing is hard, you're not crazy. Case in point, have you ever had a therapist tell you to challenge a negative thought? It seems simple. If I can logically disprove the thing that I'm stressing about, then the stress should go away, right? I was a smart kid. I figured I could master this trick in a day. It actually took me 10 years to become good at this. What I eventually discovered was that it wasn't enough to just review the evidence and tell myself that a negative thought was false. Have you ever been told, don't think about a white elephant? Most of us, the minute we hear this, will think about a white elephant. Psychologists call this the ironic process theory. Focusing on not having a certain thought tends to increase the prevalence of that thought. Super fun for those of us with intrusive thoughts, but my being annoyed about it will not change how the brain fundamentally works. Our brains need something to focus on. Otherwise, they will focus on the exact thing we're telling them to ignore. It's not enough to dissect and disprove my negative thoughts. I need to give my brain a new thought to focus on instead. This part also sounds simpler than it is in practice. So, first, imagine that a baby has your keys. It might be hard to pry the keys out of the baby's fist without hurting them, but you can dangle pretty much anything in front of a baby and they'll grab it with their sticky little fists and release your keys in the process. Working with my negative thoughts is more like getting a Corvid to trade me for my stolen keys. Corvids are a lot more selective than babies. I need to find something that the Corvid is actually willing to trade for. Every Corvid's going to be a little bit different, and the same Corvid might accept different trades on different days. The trick to making challenging negative thoughts effective for myself is to find a replacement thought that my brain is willing to trade for at that particular moment in time. Let's walk through this, continuing to use the Corvid metaphor. You know what the first step is if I want a Corvid to return my stolen keys? I have to notice that my keys are missing in the first place. In the easiest scenario, sometimes I catch my little brain Corvids in the act of key theft. Let's say I walk into a room, wave to my friend, and my friend immediately turns away and leaves. Instantly, I think, oh no, I did something wrong and my friend hates me now. Left unchallenged, that thought would lead into a spiral of hurt and sadness. But if I recognize it as an automatic negative thought, I can start challenging it immediately and avoid the worst of the emotional spiral. This is not always what happens. I'd like to tell you that it's what usually happens, but I would be lying. Most of the time, I notice an intense emotion and have to back solve to find my trigger thought. For instance, I might be going about my life and suddenly notice an intense desire to throw someone or something off the highest balcony I can reach. I then realize that I am angry. Now I get to ask the $1,000,000 question. Why am I angry? My troubleshooting hierarchy actually begins with when did I eat last? And yes, but did I have protein? But we'll skip ahead to the cognitive steps. When did I start feeling angry? Just now? 3 hours ago? Have I been slow boiling all week? What happened or has been happening around that time frame? Maybe I received a work email that felt rude to me. Maybe there is mess piling up in my shared apartment. Maybe a friend or partner said something that sounded just like my parents and it reopened some old wounds. Is there anything running through my head? Something that I'm ruminating on or deliberately trying not to ruminate on? Journaling often helps me with this step. I'll turn on some metal music, do a bit of stream of consciousness vent journaling, and see what I spit out. Odds are good that what I spit out will lead me toward the thieving Corvid in my brain. Now, once I find the Corvid that has my keys, what can I do about it? First, and I cannot stress this enough, I cannot berate a Corvid into doing anything. The Corvid will most likely fly off with my keys and make my job even harder. In the same way, if I yell at or shame myself, the thoughts and emotions get harder to access and my distress increases. A Corvid that steals my keys is just being a Corvid. My brain fixating on a negative thought is just being a brain. It tries to keep me alive by detecting potential threats, and I need to work with it rather than against it. And that's why I use the metaphor of a corvid. Picturing my brain as an animal that I like helps me to approach it more gently. So instead of scolding or shaming myself, I need to approach my negative thought with curiosity. Where did this thought come from? What evidence do I have for or against that thought? Is it really true? This was initially where I would stop. But now I know that I need to provide my brain with a new thought that aligns with the evidence and that my brain is willing to believe in this moment. Suppose my negative thought was, I'm late again, I am such a bad friend. If I try to instead think, I am an amazing person, but I don't really believe it at that moment, that's not an effective substitute thought. The brain corvid is not trading for it. However, if I think other people make mistakes just like I do, and I wouldn't judge a friend this harshly for being late to a meetup, I might find that very believable, in which case it's a good trade. The corvid accepts. Many of my negative thoughts are recurrent. The same thought will come back on many different days. However, my brain will not always accept the same substitute thought. I constantly have to ask myself, what's the best thing I can believe today? Let's take my self-image for a second. My automatic negative thought is that I am ugly and worthless. My replacement thoughts change from day to day based on what I can believe in that moment. Some days, I can believe that I am an absolutely beautiful person with an expressive face, touchable hair, lovely eyes, etc., etc. Some days, I can believe that I am cute and a really interesting person to talk to. Some days, I can believe that I am a feral art gremlin. But I am happy being a feral art gremlin, and some portion of the population will love me this way. And some days, the best I can believe is that my body and my face are human, and they are doing their best to keep me alive. Notice that all of these beliefs are a significant improvement over I am ugly and worthless. A mildly positive or even neutral thought that I can actually believe that day is far more effective for me than an extremely positive thought that feels like a lie. Let's revisit some of the situations I talked about earlier. So case one, my friend leaves the room when I walk in, and I have the thought, I did something wrong and my friend hates me. First, I review my evidence. The only evidence I have for my friend hating me is that they left. Are there other possible explanations for that event? Maybe my friend didn't see me. Maybe they remembered that they needed water or a bathroom break. This is the thing with my neurodivergent friend group. The moment their concentration on their activity breaks, that's when they notice their needs. So greeting them may ironically lead to them needing to get up and leave. Would those explanations also fit this evidence? What do I know about my friend that can help me interpret their behavior? The best thing I can believe depends on the friend. Maybe my replacement thought is, my friend loves me. We're mental health buds. They're going to laugh when I tell them about this later. Maybe it's, look, if my friend really hated me, I'd know it. That bitch isn't subtle about anything. Or maybe it's just, I don't have enough evidence to say they hate me. Let's take a breath and see what our next interaction looks like. And I try to go forward in curiosity over fear. Case two, getting a brusque email from a coworker and thinking people don't respect me. Again, what is my evidence? The range of human communication is pretty wide, especially over text formats. Depending on what was written, they may not have had any negative intent, and they just have a different written communication style than I do. I grew up in a house full of neurodivergent people, so I've seen some impressive variations in communication style. My burden of proof to conclude that someone is actually trying to hurt my feelings is pretty high at this point. This is probably frustrating for anyone out there who is trying to hurt my feelings, but that's kind of a them problem. Maybe I conclude that they did say something rude. However, just because someone is acting rudely, that doesn't automatically mean that their feelings and behaviors are about me. People have all kinds of feelings for all kinds of reasons. The person might have had a bad day or be generally frustrated with the project we're working on. My go to replacement thought in this situation is just to picture the person stuck in traffic. Their rude email feels a lot less personal with that framing. Well, maybe this person genuinely and intentionally is being rude to me. They might even do that frequently. Even so, does that have to be my problem? This is a big part of the logical assessment, too. My thought that someone is being a jerk may be true, but does it logically follow from their rude behavior that I am worthless? I might think, yeah, Candace was pretty rude today, but these 5 other people I interacted with treated me with respect. Not everyone gets along, but plenty of people respect me. And I picture some of my positive interactions for my little brain Corvid. It puts down the idea of being worthless, and we keep moving. Another thing I've found is that my Corvid brain is much more likely to accept a trade if the replacement thought is interesting. When I was first learning to give my brain a replacement thought, I didn't want to oversell the positives for fear that I wouldn't believe my new thought. I tended to use simple, generic thoughts like, I am a good person. But the thing is, my negative thoughts are emotionally charged and highly specific. There's a lot in them to catch my brain's interest. Trying to replace the thought, I am trash, with I am a good person is like asking a Corvid to trade my keys for a saltine. We're not on the same flavor rung here. That's not going to work. We got to make things a little juicy for the Corvid. I found that it helped to use more specific and/or evocative words. For instance, I might say, I am a kind person, and cite specific examples of my kindness. I might say, I am brave enough to try a new skill. I might go for humor and say, according to no less than 20 cats, I am an expert chinny scratcher. Or even, I am the person who tells children weird biology facts, and that has to be adding some value to the world. Even though I'm using logic to interrogate the negative thought, I'm not writing an academic paper. My replacement thought doesn't have to be a perfect logical refutation, and no one is coming to pick apart my claims and make sure they're fully supported by evidence. The logic step is the analysis. The replacement thought just has to be positive, related, and interesting enough to convince my brain Corvid to trade for my goddamn keys. You know what my brain really loves? Humor and being a dramatic bitch. So, when I have the thought that I am trash, here's what I actually use as a replacement thought. Maybe I am trash, but so are the fucking stars, and they've shown no inclination to dim themselves because of it. Now, technically, I did just call myself trash. However, I segued into comparing myself to the stars and drew an image of determination and untouchable worth while making myself grin in the process. It counts. My therapist laughed and didn't tell me no, so it counts. When I get stuck trying to come up with a replacement thought, I'll go look up affirmation statements around the topic at hand. Fear, shame, helplessness, whatever. I'll read through hundreds of affirmations and find maybe 10 that actually resonate with me. In any given emotional flare, maybe 3 of those will actually feel right. So I stash the affirmations that resonate when I'm reading the list in a notebook and refer back to them later. I'm good at living with anxiety and depression, but if I'm honest with myself, they still affect my worldview. Sometimes it helps to outsource the positive thought generation process to people who have a sunnier outlook on reality. Now, there's one more important thing I learned about the whole challenging negative thoughts business. We often think of therapy as a risk-free treatment, but that isn't exactly true. And after 14 years of challenging all my negative thoughts all the time, I ran face first into one of the pitfalls of cognitive therapies. You see, I got so used to challenging my negative thoughts and reviewing the evidence against them that I forgot to look at the evidence for them. I developed the habit of gaslighting myself and disregarding any uncomfortable perceptions I had about my life or my relationships. And I learned the hard way that when you are constantly gaslighting yourself, it is absurdly easy for other people to gaslight and manipulate you. Our negative thoughts and emotions don't just come out of nowhere. They alert us to problems in our lives. Sometimes the problem is in my head, but sometimes it's not. There may be an external problem that I need to do something about. It's still helpful for me to slow down a moment and review my evidence rather than going with my knee jerk responses, but I can't just assume that my negative thoughts are always false. Perhaps I need to check in with my friend who left the room and see how they're doing. I try to ask open ended questions when I do that. People tend to respond better to "How have you been doing?" than "Do you hate me?" But to be fair, most of my friends have mental health stuff too, so asking, "Hey, are you upset with me about anything?" isn't too surprising to them. I just also have to be willing to hear an answer I don't like and to work on any problems we might have in our friendship. Perhaps things with my rude coworker would be smoother if I started CCing our manager on emails. Many people are less rude when they feel supervised. Perhaps if I'm feeling stressed about the messy apartment, I need to bite the bullet and talk to my roommates about cleaning. It helps to approach this as a problem solving discussion instead of a list of demands. We'll have to figure out what is mutually workable and factor in everybody's needs. I might have to compromise on the main living areas and focus on keeping my room clean so that I have a clutter free space to calm down in. Perhaps if I got upset because something reminded me of my parents, I need to work through some of my familial emotional baggage. I might also need to talk to the friend or partner whose comment set me off about that trigger and see if we can work around it for a while. It's still very easy to doubt my own interpretation of events, so I find it really helpful to have someone I can ask for reality checks. Maybe a therapist, maybe a friend. But if I want a meaningful reality check, I have to be completely open with the person I'm talking to and not worry about making myself or the other person look bad. If I gloss over my feelings or the reasons I feel like someone is treating me poorly, my therapist or friend can't provide an accurate reality check. That need for honesty is one of the reasons I see a therapist. The therapist doesn't hang out with my friends or family, so there will be no awkward moments around the dinner table. If you figured out the whole get friend support without creating drama thing, please drop me a comment. I'd love to know more about how to do that. So, key takeaways. Number 1, the brain picks things up like a goddamn corvid. It's just trying to keep me alive, not trying to harm me. If I want my brain to let go of a thought or belief, I need to give my brain a replacement thought, something that's healthier for me, something that gels with the evidence, and something juicy, evocative, specific, and/or funny. It can be easy to build up an assumption that my thoughts and feelings are irrational. I need to remember to interrogate both sides and have someone who can help me with reality checks. And that's it for today. As they say on these interwebs, like and subscribe, drop me a comment. This series is less of a class and more of an unofficial 3 a.m. study session with your neurodivergent friend who has a special interest in this topic. So while I do have some planned topics to info dump about, I also want to know what areas of mental health give you trouble so we can dig into those. Until next time, stay weird out there.